Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. I'm Yomesh Gupta. In this video, we are going to solve a question called implement promise merge. It's a intermediary front-end solving problem. We are basically going to take a look at what are the requirements, how we can come up with a solution, and why it's an intermediary question, and how this question can diverge into different branches. What could be the possible happy flows, sad flows. We will try to rewire our brain and program it in a way that whenever we approach certain problems or any problems in our day-to-day job, then we always think about edge cases, guardrails, happy flows, sad flows, and how the fundamental JavaScript concepts will help us solve this question. So the aim with me making these videos is not just to help you prepare for front-end interviews, but also to make us think that how we should approach the problems, how we should break down those problems, and how ultimately knowing the fundamentals of the language help us, and how these questions are a good way to understand and explore the concepts of the JavaScript world or the front-end world in general. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's take a look at the problem statement and see what exactly is the ask in the question, what we have to build. So it says that you have to implement a function called promiseMerge that takes n number of arguments of promises as input. Okay, so that means we have this function promiseMerge. It's going to take n number of arguments, which we see in the syntax here at the bottom, p1, p2, so on till n. So p1, p2, each individually is a promise that we provided to us. Okay, cool. Now it should return a promise that fulfills with so and so condition. So this returns a promise, and it can either fulfill or it can reject with a type error. Okay, let's see what are the fulfilling conditions. Submission of all resulting values if the type of all input is number. Okay, let's see what does that mean. Do we have a example section? Okay, we do. So in the promise merge, we are passing two promises, promise resolve 1 and promise resolve 2. So this is 1 and 2, and we have to return 3. So which is equivalent to the first point, that summation of all resulting values if the type of all input is number. Okay, so 1 plus 2 is 3. So in terms of number, we have to add it up. Concatenated, so if we see the second point, concatenated value if the type of all input is string. Okay, so if we have a string devtools and dev.tech, so we'll concatenate, that is devtools.tech. Okay, so in case of string, we have to just join the strings, or if we have n number of strings, we have to join all the strings. Computed value using AND operator if the input value is Boolean. Okay, do we have an example of Boolean? Yes, we do. So if you see this example, so we have resolve true and resolve false. That means we have two booleans, true and false. So the output is false because we have to use the AND operator. True and false would give you false. And a new concatenated array if the type of all input is array. That means if we see this example, that we have one array with 1, 2, 3 value, and second array is 4, 5, 6, and third is 7, 8, 9. So it would just merge all the arrays as a flat array and return the value. Okay, got it. And a new object with all the keys from inputs if the type of all input is object. Okay, let's see. So we have an object example here. We have a1, b2, and c3, and we merge the objects and return it. Okay, simple enough. So, and the error condition is that it should reject with the type error if either of the input is different from the other inputs. Okay, that means if we see this example, the first promise is resolving with the value devtools, that is a string, and the second promise is resolving with the value 1, which is a number. So there is a mismatch of type, that is why we reject with type error. Same goes here, string and array. So we have a type error. And if we do not pass anything, then it should also reject with an error. Okay, so this is one of the conditions. Got it. Now what else? We have the assumptions part, that valid input types are number, string, boolean, array, and object. Okay, so anything else if we get as an input, we should not be concerned about it, or ideally throw an error. Okay, cool. So as of now, this seems like a straightforward question, that we have a promise merge. We have a function that takes n number of promises and merge the results and return it. But why it is an intermediary question, that we will see, that there are little nuances to it. There are, conditions we have to be mindful of, and how certain deep knowledge of or basic knowledge of JavaScript fundamentals will help us, overcome certain test cases. So let's start with the code part. Uh, so the first one was that summation of all result values if the type of the input is number, and it should return a promise. So we know it returns a promise. So let's say it returns a new promise. We have two values, resolve and reject. So we know it is going to return a promise, but also we have to, for it mention that argument takes n number of promises. So let's collect them. So promises, and it returns. So we can, let's create a variable, or first also, yes. So let's say we have p1, p2 till pn, but get we have to work with the responses of this promises or results of promises, that is r1, r2, and so on. So that means we need to resolve these promises. We can do so by calling promise.all and passing all the promises here. So because we have to execute all the promises and work with the resolved values or rejected values. So we have results here. Let's store here. Also in the catch, if there is an error, we'll reject it with the error right away. So we'll have this. Let's format the code. Okay. And inside this, let's say we have a variable called response. Let's make it null, and we can return the response for now. Okay. Now our first condition says that summation of all resulting values if the type of all input is number. Okay, so we have to work with numbers first. So for that we need to know the type. How are we going to do that? We can just simply use type of. So if we see, let's say if we have this one, the promise.resolve1 and promise.resolve2, that means we, in the results, we are going to get 1 comma 2. So 1 comma 2, so we can do a type of results 0, which is going to return a number to us. So we can do the same thing. Let's say we say type, and type of results 0, and we will use this. Now ideally all the values in the resulting array, the results array, should be the of type number because of the first type. If they are not matching, then we'll throw an error. So we'll handle that case. First let's handle the number condition. So if type is equal to number, then let's say response equal to results.reduce will have the accumulator, let's say the current value, and accumulator plus current, and will return the current. And since it's a number, so we'll pass it as 0, and we are accumulating and we are returning the response. So for now let's run the test cases and see what are we are working with so far. So if I run, you see our first test case passes, but rest are failing for now, because see if our initial value was, so let's first talk about the first test case. So promise.merge, promise resolve 1, promise.resolve 2, and this is also 2. So the expected value is 5, that is 2 plus 2 plus 1, that is 5. And we are doing the same here, that we are finding the results of 0, as in 0th position. We are finding the type, and we are assuming that if the first is number, then all are numbers. We don't have a check yet, but we will add those. So if the type is number, then we iterate over the array. We create a summation, like just like we see in terms of number, we have to just add it and return it. And in this case, but our second condition and third, all other test cases are failing, because this is promise.resolve youtube.com and promise.resolve Devtools Tech. These are strings. We have to concatenate the strings and return it, and we are not handling the string case, and it's so that's why it's returning a null. So maybe we can do string here only, that we can say it is string if the type is number, because in both cases we have to iterate over the array and concatenate. The only concern here would be the starting value, because in the case of number it's a 0, but in terms of string we have to pass an empty string. So we can say if type is equal to string, then we'll use the empty string else 0. And if I run this now, we'll see that both our first and second test cases are passing for now. But our third test case, which says if the arrays are present, then it is failing. Okay, now we know that if we do type of array, then it returns us an object. So we have to do that, we have to take that into consideration. So, and plus the type of object would also be an object, so it can handle both the cases. Let's do that. So if type is equal to object, then now we have to handle two cases, array plus object. We have to handle these two cases for now. Okay, let's do first array. So if array dot is array, array dot is array results 0, that means the first one is the array, we will do array dot is array, then we can say response equal to, now we can't do this if you're thinking about results, and so let me try this out. So we are just spreading the array into a new array in the response variable, and we are returning it. So if we run now, so this fails because, okay, so it's saying results is invalid. Okay, my bad. Let me run this again. See, it is failing because if you see here, it says that 1 comma 2 3 comma 4 5 comma 6, this is the, we are just adding all the arrays, but we have to return it as the merge of all the arrays, all that the first level would be flat, so it won't work. So what else we can do here in terms of array? What else we can do? We can use concatenate here, and we can spread the results array. So this would be like dot concatenate, and we would be, since we are spreading, so it would be 1 comma 2 3 comma 4 and 5 comma 6, and concatenate function will take all the input arrays and merge it with the initial provided array. So this would give us 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 comma 5 comma 6, and if I run this now, see our third test case with the array 1 is passing now. So now we have to handle the object case. In case of object, what else? Let's close this one to make it higher. We can do the same thing. I mean, we can't use the spread operator directly because that would be the same problem. So what we can do is object dot assign, we can say pass an empty object and then the results. So this is working in the same manner, that if we pass object dot assign, so and we are spreading, that means we are getting a comma 1, because the next test case says a1 b2 c3. Okay, so a1, then we are passing b2 and so on, and this will result into an object where a comma 1 b comma 2 and so on. So you have to when you're solving this question, you need to understand how language features work. You can't just use spread operators everywhere. You need to know where to use concatenation, where to use object.assign in particular cases, and how they work, and how objects and arrays are merged. So if we run the test case now, see, our fourth test case passes, where we are passing the objects. Now the next test case is failing, which is a boolean, which is true, false, and true. Okay, so we haven't handled that case yet. So let me handle this. Else if type. Okay, wait. This is not the. This is the inner else if. So we have to write here. Type is equal to boolean. If it's in a boolean, then response equal to. We have to do the same again. We have to iterate over it. Accumulator dot and current. Now since it's an AND operator, what do you think would be the starting value for the boolean? It should be true or it should be false? If I provided false, that means that even though all the inputs are true, since we are using AND operator and the starting value is false, it would be false always. That's why we have to use true. If it would have been OR, we can use true or false either ways. So we can say accumulator equal to and current, and we have to return the accumulator. And if I run this now, see, it is returning the true value for test case 5, and the test case 6 is automatically handled because of how we are handling numbers and strings, the first if condition. Now the test case 7, which is an error condition, the sad flow, which says that if we are resolving with two different types, this is number and this is false, then we have to throw a type error, which is not happening in our case. We are simply working it through. So how can we do this? Maybe we can do that. We can iterate over the array and initially and check if everything is working, if all the input values are right or wrong. So here we can add a check starting with 1, because we already know the type of 0, till I is equal to results dot length, and we can do I plus plus. In this case, we can find the current item type, which would be type of results I, and if the current item type is not equal to type, then we can reject it with a type error, because this is expecting a type error, and we can say invalid types or something, any message. And if I run this now, see, our 7th test case passes. If we are resolving with 1 and false different types, then this is passing. We haven't handled the case that if there are no arguments passed. So rather than going inside this, we can simply handle it here, that if promise is dot length is equal to 0, you can do the not operator also. We can simply reject it with a new type error, and we can say invalid arguments or something of that sort. So we don't have to even resolve the promises, because we know that it is empty. And if we run this now, so see, our type error is gone. Now the ninth test case is a bit tricky, that promise.resolve new set. So we are passing a set. So set is not a valid input. We saw that the assumption is that valid input types are number, string, boolean, array, and object. Okay. So how can we handle this case? How should we handle this case? You can think of, maybe you can pause the video here and think of different solutions that we can check the type, and then we can do these things. Let's say if I check the type of a set, type of a new set, what is the type? First of all, is it a type of set is set or what? So if I see the console log, it is saying object. So it's saying an object. That means the type of set is an object. Okay. So it would be going inside this block line number 42 and doing some processing, and we are getting an error. Okay, we should ideally throw an error because it's an invalid type. So how can we do this? Maybe we can maintain a list of const types, number, maybe like a enum, number and string and object, and check if it belongs to, this category. If the type is from this values only, then only we can work, else we can throw an error. But the issue here is that type of set is a object, so it would pass this check. We won't be able to handle it via this. So maybe we need to modify how we create, or how we fetch or determine the type. Let's create a new function. Let's close this. Let's create a new function called find type, and we'll pass some value here. So this function, the aim of this, sorry, my bad, the aim of this function is to determine input values type. Okay, and we know it could be an array, object, number, string, or boolean. Those are the only values, or let's say in case of sad case, it should return invalid as a type. Now let's first handle array. So array dot is array. So if the value is an array, then we return array. So it's not a primitive type in JavaScript. I'm just creating one for our use case. Now let's find out object. So if let's create a utility called is plain object, and we'll pass the value here, and this would return object. Else if, so now we know the array, object, number, string. So we know array and object. We have to still implement this plain object, but let's assume there is a utility for this. Now the remaining cases are number, string, and boolean. We have to handle those here. So what we can do is we can find the type of these. They say type of what we can do, type of value, and return if number dot comma string comma boolean includes this type. If we have this type, then we'll return the type, else we'll return invalid. Okay, so everything goes here. Cool. And so we are handling all the cases. Now we have to implement is plain object. So that means we have to validate that any value here should be just an object. It should not be a set, map, or anything. So what can we do here? So let's create a function called is plain object. We'll pass the value here. So we know that now what we have to handle, we have to just handle the object. Anything else we have to check and determine it if it's an object or not. So if we check the console, let's clear this out and let's zoom in a bit. So if we know that type of an object, sorry, my bad, is an object, and type of null is also an object. Now type of the set we are seeing is also an object. Let's say map, that's also an object. So for all these things we are getting an object, but we only need to take care of the first one. Everything else should return, this method should return false for it. It can either return true, or for new set it returns false. So how can we do this? So let's handle the null condition first. So if, because that's easy enough, so if value is null, then we'll return false, and if it returns false, then this value, it will go in the else block, and then eventually it will return invalid. Now how can we check the type of for just plain object, nothing else? So maybe we can do prototype. So now to think of this solution, you need to understand what are prototypes in JavaScript, how this inheritance works, how prototypes play a role in the entire object chaining and everything. So this solution can come to me because I know what our prototypes are. So I can use object.get prototype of value. So we get the prototype of the value. Now if we say we checked, let's say we have an object called this object and we check the prototype of this object obj, it's going to return a prototype to like an object. Prototype is an object, so we are going to get that object. So but we can't just simply match it with an random object. We don't know what to match with, but we can match it with if this prototype is equal to object.prototype, because all the objects eventually inherited from the object constructor in JavaScript. So you have this object. If you check it against object dot prototype, then it is true. This prototype value, this is basically, we can call it, let's say, values prototype, which is nothing but value dot constructor dot prototype. And this value dot constructor prototype for plain objects is equal to object dot prototype. We can also check it that if obj dot constructor dot prototype is equal to object dot prototype. See, this is true. So to create such a utility, you need to understand that what are prototypes, what are constructor methods, how prototype of an object is related to the object's prototype, which is the parent entity or the root entity, and how everything is inherited from them. So when you are solving this question, then these, and when you are in an interview setting, you're solving this question, so it can branch into that direction, that how can you check it's a plain object, how, what are prototypes, how they're related to the objects. So interviewer can go into that direction. So these questions on DevTools Tech platform give you a chance to explore these cases, that you can only solve these intermediary questions if you know the fundamentals of the language. My aim is not just to give you random questions on the web. Use these questions to think about the language fundamentals and explore the language fundamentals. Now coming back to the question, prototype equal to object dot prototype. Now there is one more case, that if we know that object dot let's say if you use object dot create, if you have seen that, you can go to MDN to read about it. So this is another way to create an object, and let's say this is called A, and when we create this, so whatever you pass to object.create becomes the prototype of this. That means that null would be equal to, a dot prototype would be null. So if you do this now, if someone is passing the value is created using object.create, so in that case object.prototype equal to a dot prototype equal to object dot prototype would be false. So we have to handle that case also. So in this case it would be prototype, either it would be null, either it should be null, or prototype equal to object dot prototype. It could be either of the two. And just to make it more robust, we can also add like type of value is not equal to object, just to add one level of more robustness. So let me close this. We have this. So we created a method called find type. We are using is plain object, so we have to use this value. So here wherever we are using the type, we'll remove this and we'll use find type. We are also going to remove this and say find type. Now since we are getting an array and object separately, we can handle it here separately also. So what we can do here is else if the type is equal to array, we can move this part here, and we can remove all these things. We can remove this, we can remove this, we can remove this. So we are handling array separately, object separately, boolean, number, string, but we haven't. So in still, if we the type is, when we are getting the type as invalid, we are not throwing an error, we have to handle that case also. So here we can do is else return reject new type error, and we can say invalid type. So now if I run this, I think I'm all fine. Yes, see, all our test cases, 10 test cases are passing for this, and it's completely working fine. Our solution is complete. We have had taken care of all the conditions, we are throwing all the errors, we are handling all the conditions. So this is my solution. Let me submit this. So I will just, let me see if I've removed all the console logs. Yes, okay, let me just clean this up, and I can simply submit this. It is, my submission is done. I can make it public now, and this is the URL I can use to share it on the web. And if I go here in the submissions tab, my submission, this is submission by Yomesh Gupta. I hope you like the solution. I hope you were able to learn something today. And if yes, then please, as I always do, like, share, and subscribe, because DevTools Tech and DevTools Tech channel and platform is the only resource that will give you one step ahead in the competition. I know people who have reached out to me, who have gotten jobs from top companies, remote companies, and global companies using the DevTools. They have used DevTools to prepare. It was a vital tool in their preparation, and it's completely free. And they were able to bag packages uh, for 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, and even 50 lakhs and above. So use this tool, utilize it more. This tool will help you, and the channel DevTools Tech will help you. Simply I would help you to be part of those top companies that pays the top dollar. If you want to be the part of 1% of those front-end engineers that do not depend on the market conditions, they will have job offer no matter the market is down. Then you have to prepare well. And just like I showed you in this question, that it's not just about, the aim with this question is not just to about give you like a problem solving and interview one, but to help you think about edge cases, about happy inside flows, to formulate the questions in a way that you get to think about the different fundamentals of the language. Like in this question, we see how the prototype, how the inheritance work, the chaining, why the prototype is null and when it is null, why the object's input values of the prototype is equal to object.prototype. So these all things you can only get it, a deep dive from DevTools platform and DevTools website. So this is it. If you feel you have a better solution, or I did something wrong, or you can add something to it, then feel free to reach out, feel free to leave a comment down below. Or and please do solve this question, share your submission with me. Till then, see you, take care, bye bye.